When I first started off in ministry, my expectations was that God would provide for us. I thought that God would make sure that our family would be covered, that we would always have a roof over our head, that we would never have a lack as far as meals to be able to eat and just various things, that as we take care of God's kingdom, that God would take care of ours. The total opposite is what we experience. And as we were believing God and speaking by faith into other people's families and just really encouraging them in their life, devastation really started to hit our family. In fact, we were actually ministering in a church that was in an entirely different city. My wife and I were traveling back and forth trying to minister in that city. But at home, in our hometown, my wife and I wind up losing our home. And we found ourselves homeless. And so here I was with my wife and my 3 kids, doing the will of God, just believing that as we took care of his house, he would take care of ours. But to find ourselves in that devastating situation, being homeless and not knowing what we were going to do or how we were going to survive. Also, the challenges of going back and forth on the road and just the stress of ministry. Oftentimes people don't really understand. They look at individuals who are in ministry or preaching and they think that, hey, they've got it together and they don't go through issues and they don't go through storms or anything of that nature. And so here we were as we were encouraging others, the stress of ministry as well, having to make sure things are taken care of ministerial-wise, having to be the encouragement for other people, just so many things. The stress of it all was also beginning to weigh heavy on me. And I found myself in and out of the hospital. That's what led me to a point of asking God, what is going on? Why? Why are we facing this? And why are we going through? And so in the midst of that, we found ourselves, my father opened up his doors to us. And here I was, the pastor of a church with my wife and my 3 kids living in the basement of my parents' home. And I don't know if I could even find a word to describe how my heart felt during those times. You've got 3 boys that are looking at you. My wife, who is the love of my life, just wondering what our next moves would be. There was times that I would become angry and even bitter because my job and my role as a man was to make sure that my children and my wife were taken care of. And in some points I felt less of a man because I was unable to provide and give them what they needed. While I was going through this, I had many questions for the Lord. And my main question was, God, where are you? Where are you in all of this? Why would you allow my family and I to go through these circumstances? Especially when I'm doing your will. Especially when I'm doing what you've called me to do. And why would you allow my family to suffer like this? And many questions will come to mind. And I think what was most challenging about those questions is that there was a season of no answer. And it's challenging enough when you have those questions, but it's even more challenging when God is silent. And I found myself in that waiting period of hearing God's voice and having to deal with the pain of what we're going through with a God that I love that was silent. When things started to turn around for me, I found myself actually in the hospital. I was in the hospital and I was actually going through an MRI. And while I was in the middle of this machine is when I came to my breaking point. And literally tears started to stream down my eyes, and I asked God, why am I here? My body was still going through various things, and I came to the point where I was saying, God, I quit. I can't do this anymore. And right there in the middle of that MRI, in that machine, I felt the peace of God that came over me. And it was then that God began to encourage me that I'm still with you. And so before our situation began to shift and begin to change, God began to do a change in me. And so the beautiful thing about it was, again, our circumstances hadn't changed, but God changed me in the circumstance. And in doing that, when I came out of that MRI that day, I knew that God was going to turn it around, and I knew God was going to do some things. And so I began to celebrate before I even saw the change, because God had visited me and I had heard him for the first time that way in a long time. The turnaround actually began with my father, who I love so much and is my heart. Because my father came up to me and he said, son, he said, you know what? He said, you and your wife can no longer live here with us anymore. And at first when he told me that, it crushed my heart, because we didn't have no place else to go. But I knew when he was sharing it out of love. And so I recognized clearly that it was time to make our move, but we didn't know what was next. And so here I am, I'm just racking my brain, God, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to get out of this? What does the next move need to be? And then my father continued speaking. He said, this is what we're going to do. He said, you go down to the city where you're pastoring in. And he said, find yourself an apartment for your wife and my three grandsons. And we're going to cover your rent for the next 8 months to a year. And he said, once we do that, then hopefully the church will be at a place to where it will be able to financially take care of you all. So the shift began. My father gave of his time and resources, his finances, to be able to bless our family. And it shifted us into the city. And once we got there, it's amazing. We started to see growth in the ministry. God began to provide like never before. In fact, he blessed our family. After being there for a small period of time, we were actually literally given a place to stay without even having to pay for it for that first entire year. So God began to turn it around and shift it and said, hey, if you just trust me and believe in me, I'm able to do everything that I promised and that I said I would do. I want to take a moment to encourage those who may be watching. Maybe you clicked on this video. I don't know, maybe you saw it on Facebook. Maybe you just got to it in some type of way. I just want to encourage you for a moment. I know how challenging life can be, and especially when you're stepping out, just believing for things to turn around, but you find yourself in a constant cycle of discouragement, a constant cycle where feels like things are falling apart. I've been there. I know exactly what that feels like. And I want to encourage you to continue to believe and to continue to keep faith, because when you step out on the things that God has placed in your heart, God will provide and he will make a way.